Has someone played a card that made you say,
"No! God, please, no! No! No!"
I remember back in 2013, I was up against a Gothitelle Excelgor deck, and this deck was a nightmare to play against. Excelgor paralyzes your Pokemon, and then shuffles itself back into the deck, then promotes Gothitelle, which says you cannot play any item cards.
Wow. That is brutal.
I despised playing against these cards, and today we'll look at 10 of the most hated cards ever. And if there's a card not on the list today that makes you want to do this, tell me about it in the comments down below. Have you ever wished Pokemon had counter spells or trap cards? Well, you can stop wishing because it happened in 2009 and everyone hated it. As long as your opponent had 3 or more SP Pokemon on the board, they could power spray any Pokepower that you tried to use. The game has lacked this kind of innovation ever since 2009's Power Spray, and I doubt we'll ever see it again. Speaking of SP Pokemon, this Luxray GL Level X was almost $100 back then. Without the Team Galactic's invention, Energy Gain, and Poketurn, this card doesn't look all that great. But in the context of all of the powerful SP cards available, Luxray GL Level X dominated the metagame. Item lock is a term in the Pokemon TCG, which means one or both players can't play item cards from their hands. SEISMITOAD EX was one of the most despised item lock cards ever because of how easy it was to attack with it on turn 1. Some might say that double colorless energy was actually the problem card here. But this is a chicken or the egg kind of argument, which you can feel free to type an essay about in the comment section. Here's another item lock card for you, but this time it affects both players.
Why?
That's right. VILEPLUME from Ancient Origins states that neither player can play item cards from their hand. This might sound fine because it restricts both players from playing items, but it's not fine. VILEPLUME decks were built with just enough item cards to set up VILEPLUME and then watch their opponents cry. Probably because of all the irritating pollen in their eyes. Let's look at Samuel Huff's 3rd place list from the Pokemon TCG World Championships in 2016. He only played 10 item cards, which was staggeringly low for decks at the time. Also worth noting here is Forest of Giant Plants, which would later land itself on the expanded ban list. This stadium card allowed you to evolve your grass Pokemon whenever you want, even on the first turn of the game. So VILEPLUME was hitting the board on turn 1 sometimes. Yikes. Don't forget to subscribe for more Pokemon TCG content and support my channel using PotownStore.com for all of your PTCG live code card needs. Dragon Shield sleeves, the best sleeves in the game. PokemonCard.io for creating deck lists and sharing them with the community. And Into the AM, outfitting your passion. Find coupon codes and links in the description down below. This next one just had to make the list, because it's the
God of all broken cards.
Arceus and Dialga and Palkia Tag Team. This card terrorized the standard format for years and is now left to run rampant in the expanded format, which still exists. Taking an extra prize card every time you knock something out for the rest of the game completely threw the rules out the window and made the game way too predictable. Leave it in the comments down below. Have you ever hated a card more than ADP? Remember my story about the Gothitelle Excelgor deck earlier? Well, here's an upgraded version of Gothitelle, Trevenant from the XY set. Much like Gothitelle, this Pokemon stops your opponent from playing item cards when it's in the active spot, but this is a Stage 1 card. It's a good thing there's not a card that allows Stage 1 Pokemon to evolve on the first turn of the game. Wally allowed you to evolve into Trevenant on the first turn of the game, since back in the XY rules, you could play a supporter on the first turn of the game going first. Needless to say, players did not appreciate this, and Trevenant was pretty much hated by the whole community. This Gardevoir is a classic case of a card being too darn good, and nobody wants to play against it. The Telepass ability lets you use your opponent's supporter cards, plus your own supporter card for turn. But the real kicker is Psychic Lock, which prevents your opponent from using any Pokepowers next turn. This might sound manageable, but your opponent will be announcing Psychic Lock as their attack for the next 12 turns of the game. So I hope you weren't planning on using any Pokepowers for the rest of the game. Flip a coin. If heads, crush all of your opponent's hopes and dreams. Why is it always heads when my opponent plays it? That's what Crushing Hammer feels like sometimes. But did you know that almost 25 years ago, base set had energy removal and super energy removal? They were even worse. One of my favorite cards ever. was actually pretty despised by a lot of players. ZOROARK GX. This card doesn't seem like much of an issue, but players would complain because this deck was able to draw so many cards and use its draw engine as a good attacker as well. I thought this was a fantastic card and only made the game more skillful, but plenty of people hated it. The final card today is another VILEPLUME, and this can't be right. Your opponent's basic Pokemon can't attack? Yup, that's what it says. This card prevents you from doing one of the most basic actions in the Pokemon trading card game. Attacking with your Pokemon. If this card didn't make you flip a table, I'm not sure anything will. You might be wondering where all of the Charizard cards are. And well, Charizard cards do typically have high HP and high damage output, but the most broken cards in Pokemon TCG are usually defined by their effects, like SEISMITOAD EX and Gardevoir, not raw damage like you'll see on many Charizard cards. If you'd like to learn more about the history of Charizard in the Pokemon TCG, watch this video next, about the first Pokemon tournament ever, all the way back in 1997. Thanks for watching today, here on Celio's Network.